The next section of Jewish history is the book of Exodus. And that's a period of 210 years, which is the narrative of the Jewish people going from an extended family into a nation. The background to that story is Joseph's sale by his brothers as a slave to Egypt. But like Jews throughout history, he will rapidly rise from the lowest lows to the highest high, becoming the viceroy of the country. And he is setting the stage for the great narrative that will unfold, where the Jewish people will then come as an extended family of 70 people. And during that period of the first 94 years of comfort and later 116 years of great hardship, they will go from being an extended family to a nation. This narrative of the Jewish experience in Egypt will also become the paradigm, the model, for much of what we understand as the pattern of history of the Jewish diaspora. That amazing phenomenon of the Jewish people living as a nation without their national homeland. In this case, unusually, the Jewish people enter at the top because their brother is the viceroy. He invites them in comfort and luxury. But as we'll see throughout history many times over, the Jewish people move into a place. First they're foreigners, but after a generation or two, they become acculturated and comfortable. They start to lose their identity and assimilate. The normal pattern of history, which happens to everyone else in history, is eventually that the minority merges with the majority, loses its identity, and assimilates. But because the Jewish people's role in history is way too critical, that can never be allowed to happen. Thus, one of the great rules of Jewish history, that counterintuitive and supernaturally, the greatest explosions of anti-Semitism, of hatred of Jews, will almost always take place in places where Jews are most like the non-Jews. So the Jewish people assimilate, lose their identity. A new Pharaoh comes along, and he accuses the Jews of being disloyal, of being a fifth column, a minority you can't trust. And then the horrible slavery of Egypt begins. It's during that period of time when the stage is set for the redemption. In a period of great hardship, the future redeemer of the Jewish people, Moses, is born. And ironically, in one of the great twists in plot, Moses ends up being raised as the adopted son of Pharaoh. But rather than being a Jew in denial, he stays loyal to the Jewish people. He's forced to flee for his life, and he spends the majority of his adulthood outside the land of Egypt. But he receives his calling from God, and God tells him, I never forget the promise I made to your great-great-grandfather Abraham. Go to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. Moses goes bound to Egypt, and then unfolds the drama of the 10 plagues, where the greatest superpower in the ancient world is reduced to almost nothing by God, to demonstrate once and for all that unlike what idolatry believes, that every force in nature has a God that governs it, God is the God of all forces. Earth, air, fire, water, life, darkness, light, death. And after the death of the firstborn, after 210 years in Egypt, where we went from a small family of 70 people to a nation of almost 3 million, finally, God takes his people out of the land of Egypt. But it's not just freedom for the sake of being free, but it's freedom for a purpose. The narrative takes the Jewish people from Egypt, crossing that sea, that final great miracle, and bringing them to Mount Sinai. And this is the zenith of Jewish history, where we have a unique event, where the creator of the universe speaks to an entire people and offers them the Torah and offers them the mission. It's at Mount Sinai, a singular event in human history, where the Jewish people, after generations from Abraham until that day, finally sign on the dotted line, basically agreeing to the contract that great-grandfather Abraham had agreed to centuries before, to finally be a nation that's a light to the nations. But this isn't the end of the story. Mount Sinai is merely the place where we sign the contract, but the story will continue as the Jewish people will then move to the land of Israel, which is the unique piece of real estate where that now nation with that unique mission will have the unique energy and that unique piece of real estate that will enable them to be a nation that's a light to nations and to continue this great journey and the great story of human history. I'm Ken Spiro, and you're watching JTV.
To stay up to date with JTV content, click subscribe here if you're on YouTube and hit the alarm bell. And if you're on Facebook, hit the like button, and under following, click see first. If you enjoy watching JTV content and want to help us continue to grow, please consider making a donation to us by clicking here.